Good morning to all. Thank you, Australian Centre for Sustainable Development, Research and Innovation, for giving me the opportunity to speak on a very, very special topic, which is the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures. This topic is very unique because still it is evolving. Many of the corporates are not aware how to implement it. The important aspect of this topic is again, it is a model for the corporate vision and the strategy to protect the biodiversity. There is a research which has shown that still there is a 60% of the corporates, they are not aware that what should be their actions. They are not aware whether really they are impacting the biodiversity, and they are committing to achieve the no net loss of biodiversity. This is the reason this topic become very important for the audience. So in next 15 minutes, I will explain about what is happening around us in terms of loss to the biodiversity. I will explain about the biodiversity policy of Tata Steel. I will also explain about the mitigation hierarchy and how one can implement it. What are the actions they can pick from the mitigation hierarchy to achieve the approach and the action for the no net loss. I will explain the concept and the definition and the framework of the TNFD and the way forward for the corporates. So this is very alarming. We are losing about 88,000 square kilometers of forest every year. Now you can understand these are the lungs for the Mother Earth, and we are losing it. We have lost almost 60% of the wild population from the Mother Earth in last 50 years. In last 300 years, we have lost almost 85% of the wetlands. And these figures you are seeing on the screen, and these are again alarming. We are having about 8.5 million species on the Mother Earth, and about 10 million species are about to extinct. Now you can understand the pace with the biodiversity is losing until and unless we are having some very strong transformative actions, we cannot save the Mother Earth. In last 10,000 years, another very different phenomena has happened, that human being was covering the 1% of the Mother Earth and 99% was covered by the wildlife. And as on date, there is a change. Again, it is a published research in 2011 that now the wildlife has squeezed to a 1% of the Mother Earth. The 67% is covered by the cattle and the remaining by the human beings. These are some of the phenomena which are happening globally. The floods and the droughts. In the Europe, we were having some very, very difficult time this year. More than 5,000 people died because of the heat waves. The ice is melting, so the sea levels are rising. There is erratic rainfall, so again the floods are coming. In the last 20 years, the rate of melting of the glaciers has doubled in Himalayas. The animals which are on the apex of the food chain, they are dying. So the food web is disturbing. There is a shortage of the water. There is a shortage of the food. There is a loss to the biodiversity because of deforestation. Because of the industrialization, there is an increase in pollution and the rising temperature. And all these factors, if you see, these are the something which is happening because of ecological factors. And these are again directly related with the climate change. There is a very strong link between the climate change and the biodiversity loss. The water cycle and the carbon cycle, these are the two very important cycles which are connected with the biodiversity loss. Tata Steel is the first company who came with the biodiversity policy in 2016. And this policy is having the commitment for conservation, enhancement, restoration of the biodiversity. This policy is the first in India and which talked about the biodiversity assessment, minimization of the impact, reclamation, reduce the impact with the help of collaboration of the experts, and to achieve the no net loss of biodiversity. This is essentially required for all the corporates. If they are really serious, they must having the biodiversity policy in place. They must having clear targets, measurable targets, so they can understand that how they can contribute towards biodiversity conservation. Why the companies are aspiring to the no net loss of biodiversity? There is again research has been done, and there are more than 66 companies globally committed to achieve the no net loss of biodiversity in last 20 years. So there is a public policy, there is a financial sector's pressure, there is a company operational and the reputational risk and the international commitments. So these are very important block for any company and very good business case. If they want to commit to the shareholders, if they put a business case before their board, so these are the four things they can tell the board that why they are talking about no net loss of biodiversity, because they want to secure the future of the business. They want to provide the sustainability. If you see what are the objective of the no net loss of biodiversity, these are very simple. Very important thing, if we are avoiding, then we are stopping the biodiversity loss. If we are restoring with the help of green infrastructure, again it is converting and enhancing the biodiversity. And if we are using the decision making framework, so again it is helping the corporates to take a wise decision, wise business decisions, that how they can conserve the biodiversity. The environment impact assessment, which is very important for taking the strategical decision, invest on the ESG, and it can be achieved with the help of commitment on no net loss of biodiversity. And definitely it will help in developing the guidelines and the skills for compensation of biodiversity. The application of mitigation hierarchy, it is very simple. The 4x4 matrix: low, moderate, high, very high in terms of value. Similarly, on the threat, very high threat, high, moderate, and the low. If the impact is direct, and if it is very high, the prescription is avoid. There is no chance to have any residual impact of such kind of the areas. If the impact is on the biodiversity resources, then the category came to the category low. The prescription is minimize your pollution and restore the water bodies. There is the opportunity to have the offset option. If the effect of the vehicles movement on the flora group, it is again high, it can be minimized and the restored, and there is opportunity of the offsets. If there is a corridor, then the impact is very high, and only prescription for such kind of area is avoid. If you want to implement the mitigation hierarchy, if you want to implement the no net loss, it is the first step is avoid, second is minimize, third is restore, offset, and do the additional conservation practices. To implement the avoid and whatever the steps I have explained in the previous slide, it is important to understand and identify the biodiversity impact. It is important to understand what are the risks, how we can mitigate it. For mitigation plan and developing the strong baseline, it is important we must having the biodiversity management plan. And this plan must be developed in the form of quantifiable, time-bound monitoring actions. These actions must be implemented. There must be revision, the quarterly, annual, and there must be review. Then only we can evaluate what are the actions we have taken to achieve the no net loss of biodiversity. These are positive or negative. Now I will explain you about the approach and the actions. to achieve the no net loss of biodiversity. So avoidance of biodiversity loss is very difficult for the businesses which are already exist. The businesses which are operating, again, it is difficult to minimize. But in the businesses which are going to close, then there is an opportunity to have the restoration in case of mining sites. There is an opportunity of the offsets. So offsets are very important when we are talking about the no net loss of biodiversity. And for achieving the no net loss of biodiversity, it is important that we must having identify all these approach in the biodiversity management plan. In this graph, you can see the negative impact of a business that can reduce with the help of avoidance, that can further reduce with the help of minimization, that can further reduce with the help of restoration, and the residual impact, which cannot be mitigated, it can be mitigated with the help of offsets. So that's why the offsets are very important. Now you will having the question that what are the actions we should take as a corporate. The first, wherever your business is, please create the green belt. In India, these are essential. These are the regulatory requirement that you must having the green belt around your factories. You must having 30% the green cover. Plantation, wherever you are, do the plantation, improve the ecosystem. Do the Mewagi plantation if you are in an urban setup and you are not having much land available. We know we have lost about 36% of the pollinators, and these are very important for our food security. So we need to create the biodiversity park in the form of the butterfly parks, so they can help in improving the pollinators. Conservation plan for the animals. It is important. If we are in India, we are having a Wildlife Protection Act 1972. If in your area there are the Schedule 1 animals, you need to prepare the wildlife conservation plan. So you need to prepare, you need to allocate the money for conservation of these animals. Habitat improvement is another very important step. Eliminate the man-animal conflict. This is another story of many parts of India where there is a animal-man conflict. Even in Africa, in many parts where the population density is high, and I explained that initially the human being cover only 1% of the land. Now they are covering more than 37%, and 67% is covered by the cattle, and wildlife is only 1%. This is another reason of jumping of many of the diseases from animals to the human being. Zoonosis, the COVID-19 is another example. Prevention of poaching, many area there is a still poaching, so many of the key flagship species are eliminating because of poaching. We need to invest to stop the poaching, reduce the stakeholder dependency on the forests. Many parts of the world are dependent for the fuel, timber, creating the awareness so they can contribute for the conservation. Trainings, encourage the local communities, stakeholder engagement, creation of the conservation awareness, and conservation of the plant and nursery. So that can all enhance the biodiversity and contribute to the no net loss of biodiversity. Offsets are very important for the businesses to achieve the no net loss. The first very important aspect is estimation of the residual biodiversity losses. Second is offsets activity and the preparation of the offsets component. So the principles are, because these are the limitations are there, not all impacts can be offsets. So this is something we need to keep in mind, that we cannot do everything offsets. We need to develop a scenario, business as usual. Because when we are talking about conservation of biodiversity by 2050, there are approaches in which the important aspect is the sustainable consumption and the sustainable production. But when we are making for the scenario, we should consider the business as usual, so we can have some stringent action or the target against the businesses, so we can contribute more for biodiversity conservation. We are not having much clarity, so equivalency cannot be achieved about the biodiversity. You cannot achieve the same thing, but we can try for it. And that definitely understand that all the risks cannot be mitigated. There is are chances when there is a failure. I'm sure now you are clear with the biodiversity laws, you are clear the approach of the businesses, their strategy and the vision. Now I'm explaining you about the task force on nature related financial disclosure. In short, we call it TNFD. So TNFD is same, it is built upon the task force on the climate related financial disclosures. In 2017, TCFD came in existence and many of the companies and the corporate have declared TCFD. They are more aware about the TCFD and the TNFD is the new thing. And the framework is again designed on the global sustainability standards by the International Sustainability Standard Board. The approach is simple, based on the feedback and the testing, market, engaging with the stakeholders, science-based target, the financial. So all these things are keep in mind when the approach is developing. And it is very pragmatic approach in which we can cover and we can understand all the businesses. There is a difference between the raw material of different businesses. There is a difference in business strategies. So considering all these learning of the TCFD have been implemented in the TNFD approach and still the work is progressing. So we need to understand about the concept and the definition of the nature, the definition of the nature capital, the environmental assets and the ecosystem services. We all know that the ecosystem services are very important for our survival as well for the sustainability of the business. And you perhaps see in this picture that the land, freshwater, ocean, and the atmosphere and the society and the business are the center of this. You can see this the realm, the atmosphere, freshwater, ocean, and land. And these are basically the assets, flow, and the values. And with the help of the conservation, with the help of risk associated, so we need to conserve the water resource. We need to consider the pollination, the quality of the soil, the biological control, because the pollination is directly related with the food security. And these are directly related with the pollinators. The soil quality, it is again directly related with the pollutant as well as the initiative which we have taken for the conservation. The crop yield is a function of soil quality and the pollinations. So if we are clear with the concept and the definition, now I will explain you how simply these dependencies are there with the opportunities as well. So biodiversity is there, the nature capital, the impact and the dependency of the business as well as of the society. So there is a cost to the nature capital as well as benefit to both society and the business. And there is a risk and the opportunity also when we are investing on the biodiversity or the nature capital. And if we are considering the nature capital in our materiality, and many of the companies consider it and they are reporting it, so it is simpler for them to understand that what are the financial sector's expectation and what are the opportunities also in terms of nature. With the help of this diagram, I want to explain you that how the companies are dependent and how the companies are impacting. So companies are basically changing the nature. We are producing, we are consuming. The physical risk, the transitional risk, the systematic risk, and the opportunities are also there. For considering the company dependency and the impact, there must be some strong actions. And strong actions can be controlled by good governance, the good strategy, the good risk management plan, and the approach which having a clear risk and the targets. And if you see that the another very important aspect, which is the macroeconomics and the microeconomics, the non-financial statement, which are very clearly understood by the people, but the financial statement for the market for the people who are in the banking sector, who are the investors, they can clearly understand if this is in the form of the macro and the microeconomics. So we all know for giving any such kind of framework, there must be some strong pillars. So the governance, very important. There must be the stakeholders who can represent, who can talk about the nature. There are the representative who can talk about the finance, the strategy for achieving the targets, the metrics and the target, and the risk management. So all these disclosures must be clearly having these four aspects, and that can easily translate it into simple language. For making it simpler, there is the approach Lee proposed, which is explain about the location of the business, which is explain about how to evaluate the dependencies and the impact, that also assess that what are the risks because of your business, because of consumption of particular resource, and what are the opportunities. And there is a preparation of the nature related risk and the opportunities. And we all know that the driver for nature change is the climate change, the resource, how much we are exploiting. If the temperature of Mother Earth is not going to be controlled less than 1.5 degree, we know there is a disastrous problem. And the IPCC 6 report has clearly indicated that whatever we are not doing, it is insufficient. We need to invest heavily on nature-based solutions. So that's why the importance of nature is very high for all the corporates. Land, the pollution, we need to implement the new technology to reduce our pollution footprint. We need to reduce the carbon footprint so we can combat with the climate change. Invasive alien species, again, it is very important so we can provide a good habitat, good ecosystem. Now I'm coming to the last slide. It is the way forward, what you can do. So the important thing is to develop your scenario with the climate nature nexus. You should develop the scenario with the time frames and considering the very important thing, the short, medium, and the long-term targets. Just like 2030, 2040, or 2050 targets, there must be a clear scope when you are having the geographical diversity of the business, when you are having different asset classes, and the type of the nature of dependencies and the nature impact. If I give you the example of the mining business and the commodities which are agriculture based, so they are having different approaches. So we must be clear that for which business and the approach we are going to speak and evaluating. The materiality, as I explained, it is very important to consider which is the important aspect for business going to have because it is impacting the business growth or the future. Social dimensions are very important for Asia as well as Africa, Latin America, where people are highly dependent on the nature. In Europe and America, Australia, people are also dependent on the nature, but not so heavily because the livelihood of the people are dependent in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Similarly, there is a still debate on nature positive, that how much percentage of the nature or the habitat should be. Recently, the COP15 has given the guideline, the 30% of the habitats can be restored by 2030, the data metrics and the sector specific guideline. So these are some of the way forward for the business to achieve. Now, briefly, I will recap. I talked about the biodiversity loss. I talked about how you can evaluate your baseline. I speak about the no net loss of biodiversity. I talked about the TNFD, how you can have your concepts and the definition, the leap approach, and the way forward. These are my contact details. If you are having any question, I will be more than happy to respond. And again, I am thankful to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak on this special topic. And I'm sure this is the first time any conference has picked this topic. Thank you very much.